C2 Wrestling, we are back. Finally, with some time to do different style videos. We do the podcast every week. We do Raw and SmackDown recaps. We do live streams, live reactions, you name it. But we want to get more into doing these videos of trending topics. So make sure you're subscribed, have notifications turned on, follow us on our socials. You'll see us post clips all the time. But Snowden, Snowden, Snowden. We have been talking about this specifically in the post shows of Raw and SmackDown. The WWE Tag Team Division. I should stop. The Raw Tag Team Division.
Yeah. If we're gonna get a little specific here, there's two tag divisions. One of them needs a lot of help, but you gain that help by utilizing that SmackDown tag division. So that's gonna be a lot of what we discuss here today. Is both Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown. Pretty much, how do you save the tag division?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in, I forget who said this, but I heard it once and I try to, I don't want to say live by it, but incorporate it into everyday life. When you think something is bad, instead of just complaining about it, come up with solutions, even if it leads to nothing. We know Triple H is going to click on this video when we send it in our group chat, and he's going to watch it, and maybe he'll listen to some of these solutions. So, we've got some ideas on
Mhm.
how to fix the WWE Tag Team division altogether because it's crazy that right now it is probably the deepest it's ever been, which is what makes it more frustrating.
Yeah, the rosters are stacked. NXT doesn't necessarily have a lot of tag teams that are ready to come up right now. But that's good because there's not really space. There's so many established tag teams on both shows, SmackDown and Raw. If you mix them up together, you kind of separate the bunches, you draft, you shake them up, whatever you got to do. You have two really solid tag team divisions. It's a shame that one of them, now Netflix Raw being the longer show too, is not really getting utilized properly. This does come right off the back of Judgment Day kind of winning the tag title. So we hope there's a little bit of a resurgence in the division there. But it's really crazy that the rosters, the tag rosters, I should say, are as deep as they are right now. Some of the best tag team wrestling we've seen since probably the black and gold era of NXT can come out of these tag divisions.
So let's go through some of our ideas. As you can tell from the thumbnail, there's definitely one obvious one that we'll get
Mm-hmm.
into. But basically, this video is ideas on how to make the tag team division better, whether it's splitting an existing team, whether it's creating a new team, whether it's signing people. We're going to go through. So, Snowden, what was one of the first things that came to your mind on how the hell do we fix this?
So honestly, as you said, the card shows a pretty prominent team. So we'll touch on that. But the first thing that came to mind for me, honestly, and don't get me wrong, I like Finn. I really like Finn. I really like JD McDonough. But you put those Raw tag straps on Big Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. And now, listen, I understand Judgment Day is at least on TV every week. The New Day kind of was too, but in very less prominent roles than Judgment Day. More prominent than the Judgment Day is Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed right now and Seth Rollins. Now, we have already discussed this in some reviews that I don't want to see the tag titles on those guys and then the defending against Penta and Sammy. I don't want to see that necessarily. But if you put the tag titles on Bronson and Braun Breaker, then they're on TV every week and they're going to be in the main event picture with the tag team championships. That's step one to really propelling not just the division, but the titles themselves. They become less props and more championships.
Yeah, I completely agree. My only fear with it, because
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that came to my mind, I would put the titles on them. My only fear with it is they'll be on TV, they'll be in matches, they'll be in tag matches.
Mm-hmm.
It could be where we end up being even more frustrated that they are on every week and they have matches every week, but none of them are defending the titles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that is my only worry that they end up having their champions for 100 days and have one title defense.
Yeah, this stable of Seth, Braun, and Bronson is totally different than Imperium was. But it's a shame we never got the Gunther World Championship run while Fabian Eichner, whatever you want to call him, Giovanni Vinci, and Ludwig held the tag titles. But you have that opportunity easily with Seth, Bronson, and Braun. Completely agree, though. I want them on TV with the belts, but I want it to be meaningful. I don't want them just on TV with championships. You have to get them into kind of their own feuds. And again, I want those feuds to be with tag teams. Seth might be feuding with Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn is friends with Jey Uso and Penta and all these guys. I don't want the tag titles defended against universe mode tag teams. I want tag teams, like we just said. There's a many. There's we I on count written down. I have about 18 teams written down that are established tag teams right now that can be feuding for these championships.
You know, to piggyback off of your point number one of put the titles on Bronson and Braun,
Mm-hmm.
it'll lead me to my first point, which is not like I'm as strong about this as the others, but it is something I would do to help fix things. And I know they just won the titles, but taking the titles off of the Judgment Day, more importantly, taking them a bit away from the tag team division for a little bit. The Dom Finn split has been teased for a while. The Liv injury probably throws a little bit of a wrench into things.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've seen plenty of posts about WrestleMania was a few months ago and they're best buds now, whatever. I don't really care about that. What I do care about though is Judgment Day has been like the pull this lever in case of emergency.
Yeah.
I look through the Raw tag team division right now. Balor and McDonough are the champs.
Yep.
They're not facing Otis and Tozawa.
Yep.
They just beat the New Day. They feuded a bunch with the Viking Raiders. They've already feuded with LWO. They're probably not going to feud with the Creed brothers. Theron and Waller we'll touch on in a second. Dunn and Bate, they've semi-faced, semi-haven't. They may be injured as well. That only leaves Bronson and Braun. They've pretty much run their course, and I'm not saying that they should just be split as a team or anything, or completely split up the Judgment Day. Take the step back with them from the tag team division. Get Finn, whether it's with Dom or not, whether it's with AJ Styles or saying, get him in a singles feud and just mix it up a little bit. They need to be pulled away a little bit from the tag team division. I know that sounds weird. Like one of your solutions is have the champs on less. They drop the titles, then pull back
Mm-hmm.
because there needs to be a freshness. We all love the Judgment Day. They're obviously great. Any of these matchups, it's the matches will be good, but the story does nothing for me.
Yeah, Finn and JD, this is their second title run as well, too. So it doesn't have to be a 200, 300-day title run. It can be almost transitional. And I've pitched this on a previous review as well, that there's a world where, they might defend the tag titles on night one of SummerSlam and Dom inadvertently screws them. And then Finn inadvertently scores or advertently screws Dom out of the IC title on Sunday. Who knows? The Liv injury definitely puts a hold to probably the breakup of the Judgment Day. I'm imagining they want Liv. She's a focal point in that. But I do agree, it's not getting them off TV, but getting the belts on them and just off of them, I should say, and onto something fresh, something that could be a little bit more prominent in a tag feud that we haven't seen yet, I think makes the world of a difference. Now, there's a couple things that you just mentioned you want to talk about, but I have to transition this into one of my other ideas because it plays a part in Bronson and Braun holding the tag titles. And a team that comes to mind to me that would be the perfect babyface team to feud against the big bad heels. You gotta pull a trade or a shakeup or a draft. I say you send the New Day to SmackDown in exchange for the Guns. Motor City Machine Guns on Monday Night Raw. That is, if built properly, very fresh. Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley versus Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed. All the teams on Raw. It's fresh for the Guns. Put them on Raw. They've run their course with the SmackDown teams for the most part. New Day has a bit more freshness with the SmackDown teams as well. But I can really see the Guns being built up to be that mega babyface team that eventually overcomes the odds against Bronson and Braun Breaker.
See, I agree, but a piece of me also agrees or disagrees that I think they're the perfect team to just keep getting close and not win, and then
Mm-hmm.
you later down the line set up for say a Fraxium to be the ones, you know, however long to be the ones to actually beat them. I love the Guns, I'm
Yeah.
those are my guys. They don't necessarily need the win. Not that this is
Mm-hmm.
about needing it, but to me, them going from SmackDown to Raw is like a brand new nucleus to the tag team
Hmm.
division.
Yep.
Because the biggest thing with Raw that we've said for a while in their tag team division, it's missing those strong baby faces. Like, yeah, we like Otis and Tozawa, but they're not they're not winning the tag titles anymore.
Jobber tag teams.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We like the Viking Raiders, but like they're not, to me, they're not really like baby faces. Like they're
Hmm.
just, it's also tough when they're bigger than their opponents who are the heels, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
The Guns are like the perfect babyface team that every single matchup is fresh. And even if it's not for the tag titles right away, imagine we get a Guns Creed Bros feud
Hmm.
for a bit,
Yep.
Guns Bait and Dunn.
Hmm.
Hell, the Guns could be kind of the focal point to taking the titles off of Balor and McDonough. Anything like that. Every matchup becomes fresh that even if they're not going for the titles right away, you can establish, similar to the Guns and DIY right now, an actual story with another tag team that isn't just about the tag titles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it puts the Guns in a more so prominent role. They've been heavy on SmackDown since their debut. Hell, they're former tag team champions already. But I think putting them on Raw freshens it up for the Guns, where again, they've feuded with all these SmackDown teams already. There has to be, in both of our ideas, a trade or two going down, to freshen up these tag divisions. You mentioned briefly Theory and Waller, and I have them written down, but there's a question mark next to them because their split is inevitable. It's coming, the Theory Waller split. Does Waller join the New Day? I don't quite know where they're going with that exactly, but I kind of planned all this out in regards to them not being a team anymore. Austin Theory and Grayson Waller.
I did as well, and I want to say it was SmackDown. You proposed the trade, which makes perfect sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
of the New Day and Waller for insert tag team in this situation to be the Machine Guns and
Mm-hmm.
LA Knight.
LA
LA
Knight.
Knight is
Yep.
feuding with Rollins. Granted, I'm sure Roman's about to come back and get into the mix. LA Knight's got the feud with that entire stable. It makes sense. It gets
Brand
fluid on
split.
Raw. You can actually go back to more of a split because those are some of the people that have been hopping back and forth. Next, I'll talk about
Mm-hmm.
a team in the thumbnail that we
Yep.
both obviously planned on talking about. To me, the Hardys could go to either Raw or SmackDown. They obviously
Mm-hmm.
are in TNA right now. The reason why they're so fresh to talk about right now is because they just did a round of interviews promoting Slammiversary. We know they want their final run in the WWE, and it's much easier to do so with this kind of part-time schedule, no house shows. They're wrestling maybe even less than they are in TNA if they go to
Mm-hmm.
WWE. I am at the point with them coming to WWE. If you do it now, they mentioned a 2030 Hall of Fame run. You do it now, you can get 3 years of part time Hardys, and then that takes you to the tail end of 2029, beginning
Mm-hmm.
to end of 2029, gear them for the 2030 Hall of Fame and they retire, whatever. That gives them plenty of time to do a chunk on Raw and then a chunk on SmackDown. So, what I was thinking, if they go to Raw, it would be to replace Waller and Theory because they split or a team that gets moved over. If they go to SmackDown, in my mind, I was thinking the Machine Guns.
Mm-hmm.
One of those teams bounce over. Either way, the Hardys being added to either side. If they go to SmackDown, you got to move another team over.
Yep.
And that might be the best scenario because
Mm-hmm.
I look at it this way. The Hardys go to Raw, sweet. There's all these fresh matchups on Raw. SmackDown, we're at the point, yes, it's established, but a lot of these teams have feuded with each other already. So if you put them on SmackDown and move one of those teams over, now you're creating fresh matchups for both brands instead of just one.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I had pretty much the same thought that the Hardy Boys, if it were up to me, I would slot them a little bit more to Raw. Now, in a world where there's 18, 19, 20 tag teams, whatever it may be, Raw is going to have one to two more tag teams than SmackDown does because it is the longer show and you can fill a little bit more time with it. The Hardy Boys, though, that's the uber babyface tag team of all time. The Hardy Boys are, in my opinion, the greatest tag team to ever do it. There's the Dudleys, there's Edge and Christian, but there's never been a better tag team than the Hardys. They're forever going to be the uber baby faces. They have to counteract the Guns or Fraxium, whatever the opposing mega babyface team is. So whether it's the Guns or Fraxium, I know part of me just said, let's put the Guns on Raw, but then the Hardys on SmackDown would be great. I just think they fit the bill of Raw a little bit more, similar to the Guns feuding with Bronson and Braun. I think the Hardys and Bronson and Braun, or the Hardys and the Creed Bros, that to me is a bit more of a moneymaker than, say, and this is nothing against the Street Profits. I love them, but the Hardys and the Street Profits, that would be an incredible match. But that's not selling to me like the Hardys versus the Creed Bros or Team Seth, whatever you want to call it.
The good thing about the Hardys, though, compared to some of these other teams, they can feud with everyone. It can be a babyface team, it could be a heel team. They don't need like they'll be babyface. That's
Mm-hmm.
no question about them. But they very well could feud with the Machine Guns or feud with Fraxium. I know they already faced, but they can feud with the strong babyface teams, and it still makes sense, even though it's two baby faces facing. Then obviously when they feud with heels, it makes even more sense. I would slot them in. Look, they're under contract with TNA. They're probably going to win the TNA tag titles back.
Yeah.
For all we know. To me, it's not impossible that this could be. I'm not saying post SummerSlam or whatever, but I'm not paying too much attention to their time with TNA or when their deal is up because of this crossover. They
They
very
can
well
show up
could work
whenever.
both. They very
Yeah.
well could work both.
We might see them with the TNA tag team titles on Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown. And listen, I'm here for it. We just dropped the terms a lot, babyface, heel. We're talking about that a lot. In terms of shaking up the tag division, there's got to be a couple turns. I think there's a team or two that can go face, a team or two that can go heel. You talked about them a little bit briefly earlier on in this clip, and the Viking Raiders, man, turn them heel. How are they not like the destruction? Nobody can stop us. Raise hell. Let's go to war. War Raiders. That's kind of the point to me. Them as a babyface team, they're great talents. Ivar, especially, is actually a magnificent talent. His little singles run while Eric was out was incredible, but it's just not really clicking as baby faces. I think if you turn them heel on Raw or SmackDown, I think they stay to Raw, but you turn them heel. The counterpart to turning them heel, when they're ready to come back, I think you turn Pretty Deadly face. I think they have a lot of potential to get over with the crowd in that manner. And, you think to the future, a year, 2 years from now, whatever it may be, the Pretty Deadly heel turn can be great. So you got to think ahead as much as you can. I would turn the Raiders heel and I would turn Pretty Deadly babyface.
I completely agree. And if we remember, they were starting to get some babyface reactions for a
Yep.
nice little stretch. Obviously, injuries have been killer for Pretty
Yeah.
Deadly.
Mm-hmm.
That's been,
It's a shame.
every time it feels like they're starting to get something,
The injuries have been
Pretty
pretty
Deadly.
deadly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Uh, I agree, though. I would turn them face. Again, it goes into like kind of shaking up divisions where one team falls, where another team doesn't fall. To counteract that, you and I have talked about reunion.
Mm-hmm.
That if you brought this up a few months ago, I would have been so against it. But now these last few months, I've really started to grow towards it. I would be all in on Trick Williams getting the call up after he drops the TNA title and he goes back with Mello. And I know that is like such a, they had this monster feud, whatever. Look at Ciampa and Gargano. Like you can tell the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
exact story. They broke up and got back together 10 times. Like it to me, look at the Hardys. Like it's like that's not the end all be all. It's not that they can never team again. The Miz and R-Truth,
Mm-hmm.
team forever ago, feud forever, team again, feud again,
Yeah.
whatever.
Hardy
I
Boys.
would, yeah, yeah, exactly. I would bring Trick Williams up as one of your call ups post SummerSlam,
Yep.
but bring him up to team with Carmelo Hayes, and instantly you have that strong heel tag team. But I wouldn't just do it and say that's the end. I would actually do it and have them immediately take out Andrade and Ray Phoenix and start a feud of Andrade and Ray Phoenix, this new form tag team, and Carmelo and Trick. You have the story of the best of seven that
Mhm.
really didn't get settled. You can play into the whole Carmelo wasn't getting TV time, unfair to Carmelo, whatever. It's an established tag team once they're put back together, puts them on SmackDown, immediate heel, much better than just a
Mhm.
backstage segment for Carmelo Hayes.
It absolutely is. Carmelo's been on TV every week. The people that are complaining that we're not getting enough of Carmelo or he didn't win this, he didn't win that. The guy's been on TV left and right. He won the Andre Battle Royal. The guy is an incredible talent. I've been saying this since he debuted in NXT. That guy's the total package. Trick Williams, that guy came out of nowhere. That is a guy that was not set up to succeed. And he has succeeded more than most do. Whoop that Trick. Trick Williams got so over as a babyface in NXT that I didn't think they were going to turn him heel, but they did, and it's working. The first ever WWE TNA champion, Trick Williams. I think there's a story to be told with Carmelo and Miz. That is not a tag team I have written down on my list of tag teams because they're not necessarily a team. But I think there's a story to be told with Carmelo and Miz, where they're teaming up. Miz has been helping Carmelo a lot. He's been like sacrificing himself to win, to let Carmelo win. I can see a story where, Miz isn't quite getting it done. He starts losing for them. He can't, seal the deal. Carmelo needs a little bit of help. And all it takes is that one backstage segment where, him and Trick are eye to eye and they just stare each other down. And the next thing you know, Trick Willie gets involved, pairs up with Carmelo. Love the idea of them feuding with Andrade and Ray Phoenix because Andrade and Ray Phoenix need a feud and they need to feud with a heel team. Who comes out on top of that feud? I don't care because it's two great teams. They're going to put on great matches. Either of those teams can go on to win the tag team championships. It is also most prominently, it's time to get Trick up. His NXT time is done. Once he drops this TNA championship, which might very well just be at Slammiversary, it's time to get Trick up. You can give him a singles run, but I think if you pair him and Carmelo as heels, just as they started in NXT, that eventual face turn for Trick is going to be double as big as it was in NXT.
I have one more move. It's actually a lack of move, but I wanted to
Mm,
touch on.
okay.
The final thing that I would do, or I should say, I would not do, is if you're looking to fix the WWE tag team division, you're trying to spice things up, you're trying to find that quick fix, whatever it may be. I'm not touching any teams in NXT because right now,
Mm-hmm.
none of them to me have that immediate, like, they're going to solve a problem. Fraxium are great. I love Fraxium.
Yep.
They got called up, brought to SmackDown, and it was kind of like, all right, probably should have been brought up to Raw because Raw needs the help, but also them being on SmackDown, SmackDown does more with their tag team, so better for them. NXT right now, I like Hank and Tank. I like OTM. I like the teams that they're establishing. I'm a little upset No Quarter Catch Crew isn't really a thing anymore.
Yeah, me
The
too.
family's no longer a thing. To me, any team right now that were to get brought up post SummerSlam, if there's post SummerSlam call ups, they are going to so quickly just get lost in the shuffle of the amount of tag teams that they have right now that they're still working into all of these feuds that it's almost doing a disservice to any of them to bring them up, keep them in NXT, establish them even more as a tag team, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
a swipe right in a few years, whatever. No team in NXT should come up yet because I think you do more harm than good to them.
Absolutely, I agree. I do have, maybe a hot take here. This one I did some deep thinking for, where, I thought of, bring Trick up. We had the same idea there. Get Trick, pair him with Carmelo. I thought, there's other teams you can trade. I said let's trade the New Day and the Guns. They kind of counterpart each other. I'd love to see them feud, but let's get them on different brands. Fraxium and then Bait and Dunn, have them on separate brands. Doesn't really matter where. How do you create another new team? I went through the whole roster. Omos hasn't been around. Who could you pair him with? I couldn't really find anybody. But I'm going through these names, and man, there's somebody that is back on TV in a capacity that we are enjoying, but Ludwig Kaiser, right? He's running this El Grande Americano gimmick. And sure, I don't know how long this is going to run. We don't know when Gable's coming back. But is there a world? where you put Ludwig back with Gunther, not as a tag team, but you reform Imperium and you add Charlie Dempsey to the mix.
I think it's more likely that Dempsey would just straight up team with like a Ludwig at some
Mm-hmm.
point. But I'm not against it. I mean, look, anything for my boy Gunther, anything for my boy Ludwig. I'm obviously,
I love Charlie. I think
yeah,
Charlie Dempsey's
I love
great.
Charlie too. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not against that at all. If the Gable injury didn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
the odds would be much higher
Yeah.
of that happening. But I love the sound of it.
Yeah. I think that's just something a little bit different. That's wishful thinking, we'll call it at the very least. It is just a shame. I went through the same NXT teams that you did. I would call up Stacks and Tony D, but they're not really teaming anymore. No quarter Kretsch crew. I loved that team. Miles Bourne, Tavion Heights, Charlie Dempsey, and Ren Sinclair, but they seem to be falling apart too. Not too big of a fan of those teams falling apart, but it is what it is. Maybe they have some plans in motion, but I don't want to see them not in the mix. I want Tony D and Stacks and Charlie Dempsey and all those guys in the mix. Maybe Tavion and Miles Bourne could still team. And then you have at least an NXT team that in a year will be ready for that call up. The tag divisions, though, no matter what you trade, what you don't trade, teams you form, teams you don't form, they are stacked. There's a couple injuries that are holding back pretty deadly, bait and done, things like that. So we're not getting a whole lot of those guys on TV. But all it takes is for those two teams to come back to either show, and it feels fresh again. I do have one last thing that I wanted to mention. I actually meant to mention this at the top of it, alongside putting the Raw tag titles on Bronson and Braun Breaker. The SmackDown tag titles, you got to freshen it up a little bit. Those 5, 6 teams have been feuding for a while now, outside of the Wyatt Six. You got to put those straps on the Wyatt Six at SummerSlam. And then every tag title feud the Wyatt Six has from there on is brand new.
Well, they may do it before that because they have the title shot on Friday.
Yeah, they do. I keep forgetting they have that match on Friday because they had the match the week prior. I get it. I'm hoping the teams kind of interfere and break it up again and they make it official for SummerSlam because we've been proponents of it. You got to get the tag titles on the card.
Completely agree. I'm very interested though on what other people think. So if you've made it this far, get in the comments. Let us know what would you do to help the more specifically Raw tag team division, but the WWE tag team division. SmackDown has been red hot. Raw has some names. There's got to be some changes. There's got to be some movement. This is what I love about wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Just the spitballing, just the fantasy booking, you name it. Because honestly, the options are endless on just the tag division alone.
For sure. It's a lot of hypotheticals, but that's the fun in it all. We're just running with it, coming up with what we can. It's funny to see a lot of the ideas we have come to fruition because it's happened before. But like you said, you got to stay tuned to C2 Wrestling. Subscribe, turn the notifications on. If you don't, what does that make you?
I'll say it in a second because I just remembered one last big thing that I wanted to talk about.
Oh,
And
okay.
you can be mad at me because I didn't write it down. I said, "Oh, it's all in here." And you're
It's
like,
all
"I
in my
wrote
head.
mine
Yeah.
down."
I remember that when you were like, "Oh,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all
yeah.
in here."
The one last thing, I'll make it quick. The Usos,
Uh-huh.
them getting back together, uh, helps the tag team division. But to me, that is so much more long term because if they get back together, you've got Solos, MFT that they're going to be feuding with
Mm-hmm.
for multiple months,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm not like completely on the, oh, they got to be back together. That's going to fix a lot of things, blah, blah, blah. I can see it. I'm cool with it. But that isn't an immediate solution to the tag team division. That is, they're going into a story that doesn't really revolve around the tag titles for multiple months.
Yeah, you can get Jimmy and Jay to form back together, and they don't need to hold the tag titles. They can be that kind of legend team that's putting teams over for the time being. But, in our hypotheticals, the Usos versus the Hardys would be great. The Usos versus the Guns. There's so many potential matchups there. I'm a fan of it. Can't say no.
Now
Should
I'll
have thought of it
say,
earlier, but
yeah, now I'll say, if you don't subscribe, you're a coward.
big time coward.